Number 1. Old Ghost Road, Railroad Bed Road. South of Brooklet, the dirt lane known as Old Ghost Road follows a forgotten railroad bed through quiet Bullock County woods. In the early 1900s, small rail lines helped move timber, cotton, and farm goods across southeast Georgia. By day, the road feels plain and sandy, but after dark, the trees close in, and the old track path feels like it still remembers boots. The story people tell is simple, which makes it harder to shake. Late at night, drivers have reported a soft orange glow ahead, floating low over the road like a lantern. It never rushes. It seems to drift at the pace of a tired man walking home from the rails. Some say it belongs to a railroad worker who still follows the old route, checking a line that no longer exists. Old railroad beds often gather legends because they were once full of sound. Whistles, wheels, shovels, voices, and danger. Men worked long hours in heat and storm, and accidents were part of the job. When the tracks were removed and the woods grew back, the road did not lose its shape. It became a long memory cut through the pines. So the mystery of Old Ghost Road is not loud or dramatic. It is a single light where no light should be, moving where a train once passed. Maybe it is a reflection, a distant vehicle, or the tricks of humid Georgia air. But when that orange glow appears beyond the dust, travelers slow down because it feels like someone is still carrying his lantern home. Number 2. Factors Walk. In Savannah, Factors Walk sits below the busy streets, tucked between old brick warehouses, iron bridges, and stone ramps leading toward the river. In the 1800s, this was one of the city's hardest working places. Cotton factors stood here, grading bales and arranging sails that connected Georgia fields to ships leaving the port. By daylight, the place feels historic and beautiful, but at night, the lower walk changes. Pedestrians have described sudden cold drafts slipping through the alleys, even in warm coastal weather. Others say shadowy figures move along the walls and vanish near the old bridges. They do not scream or chase. They pass quietly, like workers who know the route. The real history gives the legend its weight. Factors Walk was tied to cotton, shipping, wealth, and painful labor. Bales were hauled up and down the steep ways. Sailors, dock hands, brokers, and enslaved people all passed through this riverfront world. The iron bridges above make the street feel layered, as if one century is walking over another. They seem to belong to the city's memory, moving between brick, iron, ballast stones, and river fog. Maybe they are only shapes made by lanterns and passing headlights, but when the air turns cold and footsteps echo behind you, Factors Walk feels less like a tourist path and more like Savannah breathing below the street. Number 3. C Road. On the mountain campus of Berry College near Rome, CCC Road winds through forests, creeks, and quiet stonework left from a hard time in American history. During the Great Depression, the Civilian Conservation Corps gave young men jobs building roads, trails, bridges, and public projects. Their work shaped parts of Berry's huge campus and this road still carries that memory. The legend is one of Georgia's strangest road tales. Drivers say that when they head west toward Mountain Springs Church, they can count 7 bridges along the way. But when they turn back east, only 6 can be found. People try again, slower this time, watching every creek crossing and every shadow. Still, the number refuses to match. That odd little puzzle has made the road famous with students and local storytellers. Unlike ghost stories with a face or name, Seven Bridges Road is about the road itself. The bends, trees, and low crossings seem to play with memory. At night, headlights flatten the woods into black walls, and each bridge appears suddenly, then disappears behind you. Maybe the missing bridge is only confusion, a wrong count, or the way darkness tricks the eye. Yet the story lasts because it asks drivers to test it themselves. You enter thinking you are in control, counting 1, 2, 3. Number 4. Holland Road, Pigman's Bridge. Holland Road near Hawkinsville slips through deep trees and quiet farmland in Pulaski County, not far from the Ocmulgee River Basin. For generations, roads like this carried wagons, farm trucks, churchgoers, and families between small settlements. In daylight, it is a rural Georgia route. At night, the narrow bridges and dark woods make every turn feel watched. The local name, Pigman's Bridge, comes from an odd legend about an eccentric performer who lived nearby and trained pigs. Some versions call him a circus man, others simply a strange neighbor who preferred the woods to town. People say his spirit still lingers along the road, not as a monster, but as a silent presence hidden between the trees. That detail makes the story unusual. Many haunted roads begin with tragedy, but this one feels more like old gossip that grew taller with each telling. Pulaski County was built on farming, river travel, and small communities where everyone knew who was different. A man with trained animals would have been remembered, repeated, and eventually turned into folklore. Today the road carries history and rumor under the same canopy. A branch cracks, a shape moves near the bridge, and the mind fills in the rest. Maybe Pigman was only a real person turned into a roadside tale. Maybe the woods are just too quiet after midnight. But on Holland Road, the feeling remains. Someone may still be standing back from the road, watching the headlights pass. Number 5. Whitesville Road. Whitesville Road runs through the edge country between Columbus and Harris County, where pavement, gravel, trees, and old bridges meet. It is one of Georgia's best-known crybaby bridge legends, a kind of story found across the South. These tales usually grow around lonely crossings, where dark water below and an empty road above make even a small sound feel important. Here, drivers say they have heard the faint cry of a baby near the bridge late at night. For years, local teenagers have added a ritual to the legend, dusting baby powder on the hood of a car, then checking for tiny footprints after waiting in the dark. Some laugh when they arrive. Fewer laugh when the woods get quiet. The exact history behind the story is hard to prove, and that is part of why it survived. No single record explains the crying sound or the tiny print tradition. But folk legends do not always begin with one clear event. They often grow from fear, grief, warning, and the old habit of turning dangerous places into stories that children and drivers remember. By the end of a visit, Whitesville Road feels less like a dare and more like a local memory protected by darkness. It may be wind under the bridge, an animal in the brush, or the power of suggestion. Still, when a soft cry seems to rise from nowhere, people lower their voices. Number 6. Hardin Bridge Road. Hardin Bridge Road in Bartow County reaches the Etowah River near Kingston, where the land carries far older stories than any car that crosses it now. The river valley was home to native communities long before Bartow existed, and nearby Etowah Mounds preserves one of the most important Mississippian sites in the southeast. Later, farms, ferries, and roads tied families to the river. The legend on this road begins with lights. People standing near the bridge at night have reported seeing headlights in the distance, coming toward them like an ordinary car. They wait for the engine to grow louder. But before the vehicle reaches the bridge, the lights fade, as if the road swallowed them whole and left only silence on the water. That quiet trick feels stronger because the Etowah has seen so many travelers pass. Cherokee paths, wagon roads, farm routes, and river crossings all left marks here. In 1832, Bartow County was formed out of Cherokee lands, then called Cass County, and the valley moved into a painful new chapter of Georgia history. So when voices seem to drift over the water, the sound does not feel random. It feels layered. Maybe the vanishing headlights are only a bend in the road, a reflection, or mist over the river. But Hardin Bridge Road has a way of making the present feel thin. One moment you are looking for a car, the next you are listening to the river carry something older downstream. Number 7. Bonaventure Road. Bonaventure Road in Savannah leads beneath live oaks toward one of Georgia's most beautiful cemeteries. Before it became a public landmark, the land was part of Bonaventure Plantation, later used as Evergreen Cemetery. In 1907, Savannah purchased the cemetery and renamed it Bonaventure, turning the old grounds into a city-owned place of memory. The road itself feels like an entrance to another world. Spanish moss hangs low, and the light changes as soon as sunset touches the trees. Drivers have told of seeing a small girl near the stone gates, friendly and still, as if waiting for someone to arrive. Others speak of distant hounds baying where no dogs can be seen nearby. The young girl is often connected to Savannah's famous cemetery folklore, especially the gentle stories told around children's graves and old statues. Bonaventure is not frightening in the usual way. It is quiet, formal, and almost graceful. Its monuments hold sailors, soldiers, poets, families, and names that shaped the city's long river history and garden-like silence. That is why Bonaventure Road lingers in the mind. The ghostly child does not feel like a threat. She feels like a last wave from the edge of the oaks, a reminder that some places keep their dead close, but not cruel. Maybe she is only a shadow on stone. Still, when the hounds sound far away and the gates darken, the road seems to whisper goodbye before you enter. Number 8. Bill Black Road, Old Dixie Highway. Bill Black Road near Cassville carries part of the Old Dixie Highway, a route from the automobile age that later left quiet pieces behind. Cassville itself was once one of North Georgia's proud towns, created in 1832 and thriving by the 1850s with colleges, hotels, a newspaper, and wooden sidewalks. Then the Civil War changed its future forever. In May 1864, during Sherman's Atlanta campaign, Union forces came through the area, and Cassville's story turned from promise to smoke. The Cassville affair still marks that turning point. Today, late-night residents near the old road sometimes report faint harmonica music drifting over the fields, with phantom campfire smoke where no fire has been lit. That legend fits the landscape because soldiers once camped across North Georgia before moving on to the next fight. A harmonica was small enough for a pocket and soft enough for a lonely evening. Around a campfire, it could make a young man feel close to home, even while war waited beyond the trees and orders came at dawn. It feels haunted by a pause, the quiet hour before marching orders, before Cassville burned, before a town lost the life it expected to keep. Maybe the music is wind over a fence line. Maybe the smoke is autumn fog. But on a still night, the old highway seems to remember men warming their hands before morning. Number 9. Tilly Bend Church Road, Old Dial Road. Tilly Bend Church Road, also known as Old Dial Road, winds into the Blue Ridge Mountains of Fannin County, where the hills fold close and the trees can hide a house until you are almost beside it. The road is tied to one of North Georgia's most famous mountain legends, the Tilly Bend Witch, often linked in folklore to Elizabeth Jane Tilly Bradley. The story says she was remembered as a creek healer, feared by some and respected by others. Around the turn of the 20th century, old family tensions between the Tilly and Stanley clans deepened into bitter local memory. Travelers on the road still describe sudden cold pockets, as if the mountain air gathers in one place and refuses to move. The historical truth is hard to separate from the legend because mountain communities often carried their stories by voice, not paper. A healer could become a witch in one telling, a grieving mother in another, and a warning in the next. Names, feuds, churchyards, a relocated congregation, and family pride, all mixed until the road itself became part of the tale. It is not just about a ghost in the woods. It is about how a community remembers pain, blame, and fear long after the people are gone. When the wind moves through the trees like someone crying softly, the road seems to ask whether the witch was evil, lonely, or simply never allowed to rest. Number 10. Spook Bridge Road. Spook Bridge Road leads toward an abandoned concrete arch bridge over the Withlacoochee River near the Brooks and Lowndes County line. Built around 1920, the old bridge once carried traffic across the water before newer routes left it behind. Now vines, kudzu, and river dampness have turned it into one of South Georgia's most famous roadside legends. The stories begin before visitors even reach the bridge. People say headlights flicker on the approach, shadows shift in the brush, and the road seems longer than it should. The old crossing stands closed and decaying, so the danger is real even without ghosts. That only makes the legend feel stronger as the trees grow thicker and the river disappears below. Abandoned bridges are powerful places for folklore because they are made for crossing, but this one no longer lets people safely cross. It sits between counties, between road and river, between use and ruin. For decades, curious teenagers and local storytellers have treated it like a test of courage, the kind of place where laughter gets quieter with every step. Maybe the flickering lights are loose wires, nerves, or trees breaking the beams. Maybe the shadows are only kudzu moving in the wind. But Spook Bridge Road has earned its name because the setting does half the haunting for you. At the river, the dark feels thick, and the bridge waits like something the modern world tried to forget. Number 11. Stovall Mill, Covered Bridge Road. Stovall Mill Covered Bridge Road runs through the quiet mountain country of White County, where Chickamauga Creek slips beneath one of Georgia's smallest historic covered bridges. The bridge was built in 1895 after an earlier crossing washed away, and its wooden frame still feels like something saved from another century. It is only a short span, but it carries a long memory. Before cars came through, this little crossing served a working mill area. There was a grist mill, a sawmill, and a shingle mill nearby, places where families brought corn, lumber, and daily worries. In 1917, Fred Stovall bought the operation, and his name stayed with the bridge even after the old mill and dam were later washed away. The legend here is gentler than most. Visitors standing near the creek in the evening say they hear cheerful children laughing somewhere beyond the trees. The sound comes and goes with the water, never close enough to find. It does not feel angry. It feels like a memory from a summer day that somehow never ended. The bridge does not need screams or shadows. It has the creek, the old wood, and the echo of families who once crossed it as part of ordinary life. Maybe the laughter is only water striking stone, but when the light turns gold and the bridge grows dark inside, the past feels young again. Number 12. Old Young's Mill Road. Old Young's Mill Road near LaGrange bends toward creek bottoms, old trees, and the ruins of a once busy mill site near West Point Lake. Young's grist mill was built in the middle 1870s, and a sawmill was added before 1896. For years, the Young family name stayed tied to the place, where water power helped turn grain, timber, and labor into daily survival. Today the remains feel scattered but meaningful. Stone piers, old flumes, a rock and cement dam, chimneys, and the walls of a store or office building. These are not just ruins. They are pieces of a working community left behind after the mill era faded and the modern world moved its roads and attention somewhere else. The legend says that near the old bridge and creek, soft shadow figures sometimes glide along the banks at twilight. They do not rush. They appear almost gracefully, as if following the water's edge to a place they once knew. The nearby Bisham Manor, used for exterior shots in The Haunting of Hill House, adds another layer of unease to the road's reputation. But the deeper feeling on Old Young's Mill Road comes from the mill itself. A place built for motion became still. Wheels stopped, workers left, water kept moving. Maybe those glowing shapes are mist lifting from the creek. Maybe they are only shadows from trees. Still, when dusk settles over the ruins, it feels like the old mill has not fully closed. Number 13. Booger Hollow Road. Booger Hollow Road, near Cedartown, winds through deep Appalachian foothills, where the land folds into low valleys and the trees can make a short road feel far from town. In old mountain speech, a booger was not always a joke. It could mean a haint, a frightening shape, or something unknown waiting in the dark. That name alone gives the road a story before night even falls. The legend says that travelers sometimes see small lantern lights flickering among the pines on misty evenings. They move too slowly to be cars, and too strangely to be house lights. One moment they seem close, dancing between the trunks. The next, they fade into the hollow, leaving only wet leaves, black branches, and the feeling that someone just stepped out of sight. Historically, hollows like this were places of hard living and strong memory. Pioneer families built isolated homesteads where roads were rough, neighbors were far apart, and news traveled slowly. In such places, every strange sound had a name. Wind in the trees, animals in the brush, or a lantern from a distant cabin could become a warning told to children. It is not about one ghost with one clear story. It is about the old mountain fear of being watched from the woods. Maybe the lights are reflections, hunters, or fog catching distant beams. But when the hollow goes quiet and one pale glow appears between the pines, the old word booger suddenly makes perfect sense. Number 14. Thompson Bridge Road. Thompson Bridge Road crosses the northern waters of Lake Lanier near Gainesville, over a place that once belonged to the Chattahoochee River Valley. Long before the lake filled, old roads, farms, bridges, and communities marked this landscape. The original Thompson Bridge was built by the sons of Andrew Thompson on the old road to Dahlonega, before later changes reshaped the crossing. Lake Lanier itself was formed after Buford Dam was completed in 1956. Water slowly covered valleys tied to Cherokee history, farming families, churches, cemeteries, and roads. The lake became useful for flood control, power, water, and recreation, but it also left people wondering what still rests below the surface. The legend on Thompson Bridge Road often speaks of a woman in a blue dress walking near the bridge in the early morning fog. Drivers slow down, thinking she is real. Then the mist folds around her, and she is gone. Some connect her to Lake Lanier's wider Lady of the Lake stories, where grief and water seem to meet. That is why this road feels different from an ordinary bridge. It stands above a lake with a young surface and an old bottom. Maybe the woman is fog, memory, or a tired driver's eyes. But when Thompson Bridge Road disappears into gray morning light, it is easy to believe someone is still walking above the drowned valley, trying to find the road home. Number 15. Browns Bridge Road. Browns Bridge Road runs across Lake Lanier between the Gainesville and Cumming sides, carrying traffic over water that hides a changed landscape below. The older Browns Bridge opened in 1956 as part of the road system built around the new reservoir. Like other large crossings on Lanier, it existed because Buford Dam turned the Chattahoochee Valley into deep lake water. The history under this road is heavy. When the lake was created, land was bought, families were moved, and old roads, farms, and structures disappeared beneath rising water. Some graves were relocated, while other traces of the valley became part of the lake's hidden floor. That buried world gives every bridge around Lanier a strange kind of silence. The legend on Browns Bridge Road is not always a figure. Many drivers describe sudden patches of thick fog that seem to appear only in one spot. The road ahead blurs, the lake vanishes. Then comes the feeling of being watched, not from the woods, but from the dark water on both sides. It is quiet, but not empty. Maybe that fog is weather rising from the lake, nothing more. Maybe the feeling comes from knowing the road crosses a place that was once dry land, once home, once marked by names and paths. Number 16. Bullock Avenue. Bullock Avenue in Roswell looks peaceful, shaded by trees and lined with the calm beauty of the Old South. But the street leads to Bullock Hall, a Greek Revival home built in 1839. It was the childhood home of Martha Mitty Bullock, who later became the mother of President Theodore Roosevelt. In that one house, Roswell's local history touches the history of the whole nation. The legend here is gentle, almost like a scene seen from the corner of the eye. Visitors walking near Bullock Hall have reported a young girl in a white dress looking from an upper window. Others say they hear the soft rustle of hoop skirts moving along the sidewalk, as if someone from the 1800s has stepped out for one more evening walk. The real history gives the street its quiet power. Roswell grew around mills, homes, churches, and families whose lives were changed by the Civil War. Bullock Hall stood through that era, through the years when Union forces moved through North Georgia, and through the long changes that turned a private family home into a preserved historic place. The girl in the window may be only reflected light, and the dress, sounds may be leaves scraping stone. But as dusk settles on the old street, the house seems to hold its breath. For a moment, Roswell feels young again, and someone upstairs still seems to be watching the world pass by. Number 17. Lee Bell Road. Three Bridges Road. Lee Bell Road, often tied to Three Bridges Road near Americus, runs through the quiet farm country of Sumter County. The road crosses creeks and open fields where the night can feel wide and empty. In old rural places like this, bridges often become landmarks because they are where people slow down, look into the dark water, and remember what happened there. The legend speaks of a young woman seen walking across one of the bridges on moonlit nights. Some say she hummed softly, not loudly enough to frighten, but clearly enough to make a driver roll down the window and listen. There is a real sadness connected to the name Lee Bell in America's history. In 1979, Margaret Lee Bell, a 15-year-old from Americus, disappeared, and her death left a deep wound in the community. Decades later, local memory still connects her name with loss, unanswered questions, and the feeling that an innocent town changed overnight. That history makes the ghost story feel less like a dare and more like mourning. Number 18. River Street. River Street in Savannah sits along the water where Georgia's oldest city began in 1733. The cobblestones, brick warehouses, steep ramps, and river mist make it one of the most famous streets in the state. By the mid-1800s, Savannah had become a major cotton port, and the tall buildings along the waterfront were used as cotton warehouses. At night, the street feels different from its daytime crowds. Visitors walking near the river have reported silent figures moving along the cobblestones, dressed like dock workers or sailors from another century. They appear in the mist, pause near the old warehouse walls, and vanish before anyone can speak to them. The history here was not light. River Street was built on trade, labor, cotton, shipping, and the difficult work of moving goods from land to water. Many hands carried Savannah's wealth across these stones, including enslaved people, dock workers, sailors, and poor laborers whose names were rarely written down. The street remembers more than it displays. That is why River Street's ghosts feel like workers still finishing a shift. Maybe the figures are only fog, shadows, or reflections from passing boats. But when the river is black and footsteps echo against brick, the street feels alive beneath the noise. Savannah does not have to invent a haunted past here. It only has to let the old stones speak. Number 19. Abercorn Street. Abercorn Street is one of Savannah's great old avenues, running through a city planned around squares, churches, homes, and shaded walks. Near Colonial Park Cemetery, the street carries some of Savannah's deepest historic atmosphere. The cemetery was established in 1750 and became the resting place for many early residents of the city. The legend along Abercorn is quiet but persistent. People walking under the oaks on warm nights have reported sudden icy drafts, so cold they feel wrong in the Georgia heat. Others say shadows seem to move between the mansions and cemetery walls, slipping from one patch of darkness to another, as if following the old street. The history gives those shadows a reason to stay. Savannah suffered serious yellow fever epidemics, including the 1820 outbreak, when nearly 700 people died and many victims were buried in Colonial Park Cemetery. That kind of loss leaves more than names on stone. It changes the way a city remembers its streets. So Abercorn Street feels haunted by the oldest kind of fear: sickness, heat, grief, and homes waiting for people who never came back. Maybe the cold drafts are only pockets of air moving through the squares. Maybe the shadows are branches crossing old walls. Still, when the night turns suddenly cold, Savannah seems to whisper that not every burial stayed quiet. Number 20. Old Federal Road. Old Federal Road near Chatsworth follows one of the most important early routes through northwest Georgia. It grew from older native paths and became the first major vehicular and postal route linking Georgia and Tennessee across the Cherokee Nation. Permission to open the road was granted in 1803 and confirmed by treaty in 1805. The legend says that travelers on lonely stretches sometimes hear wagon wheels creaking in the distance, followed by the soft clatter of horse hooves. The sound comes slowly, like a team pulling a heavy load over rough ground. Then it fades before anything appears. The road is empty, but for a few seconds, it feels crowded with the past. Its history is painful and important. The Federal Road carried trade, travelers, cattle, mail, and soldiers, but it also became tied to Cherokee removal and the Trail of Tears. In the 1830s, roads like this helped move people away from homelands their families had known for generations. That truth gives the ghostly wagon sounds a deeper sadness. That is why Old Federal Road does not feel like an ordinary haunted lane. It feels like a line cut through memory. Maybe the sounds are wind, loose gravel, or a far-off truck on another road. But when the night grows still near Chatsworth, the creak of wheels feels possible. Number 21. Sycamore Street. Sycamore Street in Decatur does not feel like a road that wants attention. It feels old in a quiet way, lined with homes, trees, churches, and sidewalks that have watched the city change around them. Long before modern traffic and restaurants filled downtown Decatur, this street was known as Covington Road, part of an old stagecoach route toward Augusta through Covington, Madison, and Eatonton. The legend says that late at night, near the historic courthouse square, people have seen a well-dressed gentleman walking a dog that looks as pale and silent as fog. He wears clothing from the late 1800s, moving with a calm, careful step. The dog stays beside him, never barking, never pulling ahead, as if both of them know the walk by heart. The history makes that image feel possible. Decatur grew as a county seat and railroad town, and its old neighborhoods still show Victorian homes, craftsman houses, and preserved streets that hold the shape of earlier Georgia life. Sycamore Street itself was known for fine residences, and some of those older homes still remain today. Number 22. Floyd Street. Floyd Street in Covington is one of those streets where the houses seem to sit with perfect posture. Tall porches, old columns, and careful lawns give it a polished beauty that has made Covington famous on screen. People call the city the Hollywood of the South, and Floyd Street has helped shape that image with historic homes and its familiar appearance in shows like The Vampire Diaries. But the older story is not about cameras. The Floyd Street Historic District grew through the 1800s, with homes ranging from Greek Revival styles of the mid-19th century to later classical designs. These houses were built during years when Covington was not a film town, but a real Georgia community shaped by railroads, war, family names, and hard change. The legend says that at night, gentle figures in 1860s clothing appear on the wide front porches. They sit quietly, as if waiting for news from a road that no longer brings it. This part of the story feels tied to Covington's Civil War past. In 1862, 1863, and 1864, several Confederate hospitals operated in the city, and more than 20,000 soldiers were treated there. Maybe the figures are only porch columns, curtains, or moonlight on old glass. Still, when the houses glow softly after dark, it is easy to imagine people who once watched the road with worry. Covington became famous for make-believe, but Floyd Street's haunting feels rooted in something older and much harder to forget. Number 23, Robert Toombs Avenue. Robert Toombs Avenue in Washington, Georgia, carries the name of a man who once spoke loudly enough to shake rooms. Robert Toombs was a planter, lawyer, state legislator, U.S. congressman, and U.S. senator before the Civil War. His home still stands on this avenue, preserving the memory of one of Georgia's most powerful and controversial 19th century voices. The legend along the avenue is not a face in a window, but a sound. On warm summer nights, visitors have reported sudden cool drafts under the trees and the faint echo of a booming speech drifting through the air. It comes like a voice carried from a courthouse square, confident and restless, then disappears before the words can be understood. The real history behind the road gives the sound its weight. Toombs became known as a fiery orator. In 1860, he delivered passionate speeches during the crisis before secession, and in 1861, he became the Confederacy's first Secretary of State before later serving as a general. His house, built between the late 1790s and early 1800s, was later declared a National Historic Landmark. So Robert Toombs Avenue feels haunted by argument, pride, and the noise of a nation breaking apart. Maybe the cold draft is only shade moving through old trees. Maybe the voice is traffic or wind around the historic house. But when the street quiets, the past does not feel silent. Number 24, Broad Street. Broad Street in Augusta has long been the city's commercial heart, a wide historic corridor lined with brick buildings, old storefronts, and memories of cotton, trade, banks, theaters, and daily business. The Broad Street Historic District still marks the center of downtown Augusta, where the city's public life gathered for generations. The legend says that late at night, warm glows sometimes appear in the upper windows of old buildings, moving from room to room like lanterns carried by unseen hands. The lights vanish when people stare too long. They feel less like electricity and more like someone still making rounds in a city that once worked deep into the evening. One reason the story feels so strong is the Great Fire of 1916. On March 22nd, flames broke out near Broad and 8th Streets and spread across Augusta. The fire destroyed huge sections of the city, including cotton warehouses and many homes and businesses. Thousands were left without homes, and parts of downtown had to rise again from ash. They feel like small pieces of a lost city still glowing behind the rebuilt walls. Maybe the lights are reflections from cars, offices, or street lamps. But when the street empties and an old window brightens for a second, Augusta seems to remember the night it burned and the people who came back anyway. Number 25. Burnt Hickory Road. Burnt Hickory Road near Marietta runs through land marked by one of the fiercest moments of the Atlanta campaign. In June 1864, Kennesaw Mountain became a battleground as Union forces under William T. Sherman tried to break through Confederate lines held by Joseph E. Johnston's army. The road that now carries cars was once part of a war landscape of farms, ridges, and dirt paths. The legend says that in early morning mist, drivers sometimes hear the faint rhythm of marching feet. A snare drum rolls somewhere beyond the trees, then fades before the sound can be placed. There is no parade, no reenactment, no soldiers in view. Only the road, the battlefield, and the feeling that a column has just passed through the fog. The history is clear enough to make the haunting believable. On June 27, 1864, Union troops attacked near Kennesaw Mountain in heavy fighting. Historical markers note that one of the assaults moved across ridges west of a stream and astride Burnt Hickory Road toward the spur of the mountain. The battle caused thousands of casualties and left deep marks on Cobb County. That is why Burnt Hickory Road feels different from an ordinary battlefield drive. The haunting is not just about ghosts. It is about footsteps that once had orders, fear, heat, smoke, and no easy way back. Maybe the drums are distant traffic or woodpeckers in the trees. Number 26. Tunnel Hill Road, Clisby-Austin Road. Tunnel Hill Road near Clisby-Austin Road leads into one of Georgia's most important railroad landscapes. The Western and Atlantic Railroad Tunnel was completed in 1850, carved through the ridge by workers using drills, hammers, and long hours in darkness. It became a major rail link through the South, and during the Civil War, that tunnel was more than stone. It was a lifeline. The legend begins near the old tracks. Visitors have reported seeing a faint white lantern bobbing in the distance, as if a railroad man is still walking his route. The light moves slowly, then disappears near the tunnel mouth. Some say it belongs to a conductor. Others say it is only the memory of men who worked where smoke, steam, and danger filled the air. History gives the story a strong heartbeat. In 1862, the great locomotive chase passed through this rail corridor, and in May 1864, General William T. Sherman used the nearby Clisby-Austin House as headquarters during the Atlanta campaign. The house also served as a field hospital, making the area a place of travel, strategy, pain, and waiting. So when a pale lantern appears near Tunnel Hill, it feels less like a trick and more like unfinished duty. Maybe it is a reflection, a flashlight, or fog-catching moonlight along the rails. But the old tunnel has heard trains, soldiers, wounded men, and marching orders. Number 27. Riverview Drive. Riverview Drive on Jekyll Island curves through a place that once belonged to some of the wealthiest families in America. In 1886, Jekyll Island was purchased as an exclusive winter retreat for the Jekyll Island Club. Its members included names like J.P. Morgan, Joseph Pulitzer, William K. Vanderbilt, and Marshall Field, men who came to the Georgia coast for privacy and power. The legend along Riverview Drive is quieter than the history. At sunset, visitors have described seeing a graceful woman in a long Edwardian dress standing near the water, watching the boats as if waiting for someone to return. She does not rush or cry out. She simply looks toward the river, then fades into the fading gold light. That image fits the island's past. The club era brought grand cottages, formal dinners, servants, dock arrivals, and winter seasons far from northern cities. Families like the Rockefellers, Morgans, Vanderbilts, Pulitzers, and others built elegant homes designed for comfort in a world most people could never enter. Maybe the lady on Riverview Drive is only a visitor in period clothing, a shadow from the oaks, or mist rising from the marsh. But Jekyll has always been a place where wealth tried to hide from the world. When the river grows dark and the cottages sit silent, it is easy to imagine someone from that golden age still watching the boats, waiting for one last arrival. Number 28. Sandhills Road, Central Avenue. Sandhills Road, known today through parts of Central Avenue, runs near the old Augusta Arsenal grounds in the Somerville area of Augusta. The arsenal was first established in 1816 near the Savannah River, but after a deadly fever outbreak in 1819, it was moved to the healthier high ground of Somerville in 1827. That move gave the road a military memory that lasted for generations. The legend says that people walking near the old arsenal at night hear marching steps in perfect rhythm. Sometimes there is a soft metal clatter, like belt buckles, canteens, or old gear shifting with each stride. The sound seems organized, almost disciplined. Then it passes by without a single soldier appearing under the trees. The real history makes the sound feel possible. The Augusta Arsenal served through several American conflicts and expanded over time. Georgia history markers note that its buildings eventually included officers' quarters, barracks, storage structures, and far more by the end of World War II. Today, the site is tied to Augusta University's Somerville campus. The ghostly cadence sounds like duty repeating itself, long after the uniforms were folded away. Maybe it is traffic, students, or wind across old brick. Still, near the former arsenal grounds, the night can feel arranged in rows, as if invisible soldiers are still marching through Augusta's past. Number 29. Cherry Street. Cherry Street in Macon sits in the heart of a city built on trade, music, railroads, theaters, and grand old architecture. Nearby stands the Grand Opera House, originally opened in 1884 as the Academy of Music. It once had one of the largest stages in the South, and over the years, it welcomed famous performers, touring shows, and generations of Macon audiences. The legend tells of a friendly lady in a black dress seen strolling along the sidewalk late at night. She moves with calm manners, sometimes giving a polite nod before fading near the shadows of the theater district. She is not described as frightening. She feels more like someone returning from a show, still dressed for an evening that ended long ago. Macon's theater history gives that image a warm glow. The Grand was renovated and reopened, under its current name in 1905, and performers connected to its long story include names such as Harry Houdini, Sarah Bernhardt, and Will Rogers. A place that held applause, music, laughter, and gaslit excitement for so many years can feel alive even when the seats are empty. Number 30. College Street. College Street in Macon climbs through one of the city's most beautiful historic areas, lined with old homes that show the wealth and ambition of 19th century Georgia. Nearby stands the Johnston Felton Hay House, often called Hay House, a grand Italian Renaissance revival mansion. Construction began in 1855 and continued into 1859, just before the Civil War changed the South. The legend here centers on a warm light in the house's cupola. People driving the hill at night have reported seeing it glow softly, even when the mansion is closed and empty. It does not flash or flicker like a warning. It shines like someone has climbed to the top of the house and left a lamp burning for the city below. The real house makes the story feel believable because it was advanced for its time. Hay House had features that were remarkable in the mid-1800s, including hot and cold running water, central heat, gas lighting, a speaker tube system, and an elaborate ventilation design. Its cupola was not just decoration, it helped draw hot air upward through the house.
If you enjoy this video, please click the like button.
And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
See you in the next one.